Hi everyone, this is the story of my attempt at cleaning and restoring a vintage walrus hide bag. It's sitting above my shoulder behind me at the moment. I apologize in advance for poor camera work. I'm not at all good at making these videos. It's my second attempt at one ever, but here we go.
This is the bottom of the bag. As you can see, it's stamped genuine walrus, which most of these bags actually didn't have a stamp, the others that I've seen. So it's nice that this one does, just verifying what it is that it's made of. And I guesstimate that it's about 100 years old. It could be as old as 1900 or as new as about 1930, somewhere in that range. These were very common back then, sort of an overnight bag, the type of thing that someone might bring with them on a train. I've had the bag for about 10 years and it's just covered with dust. It sits on top of a bookcase just as a display piece, and I haven't had it down and done anything to it since I first got it. So rather than trying to manually remove that dust, I had the bright idea of using my air compressor, which actually worked out pretty well. This is the bag after cleaning it with the air compressor, and it really did a good job. Now, the color of the bag isn't actually that much lighter than in the previous picture, but the angle of the sun changed, and for whatever reason, with my camera not being the greatest, it looks like it's a lighter color than it actually is. I had to kind of dial in the pressure to try and figure out what was the minimum amount needed to really get the dust out of there. I didn't want to use any more pressure than I had to for risk of damaging or blowing off some of the exterior of the hide. Um, and now let's move it inside and get started on trying to get the remaining gunk off of the bag.
No place in my house has decent light, at least the type that seems to work well for making videos. But this is the bag, and as you can see, it's not in the greatest condition. It's separated or split in areas. Some of the straps, the bindings have come apart. Essentially areas of the skin that received a lot of wear when the bag was used. And there isn't much I can do about that. Since I only use it as a display, I'm not too worried about it. At this point, what I'm trying to remediate is this grime that's accumulated deep within the grain structure of the walrus hide. When I got the bag about 10 years ago, and I don't really remember, unfortunately, anymore what the overall condition of the hide was, other than it was dry and it had already cracked some at the seams or at the flex point in the bag, such as there. The straps were still intact. I damaged them while removing them because, of course, I wanted to open the case. But at the time, I didn't know what I was doing, and I used a product called Picard's Antique Leather Dressing, which is similar to Vaseline in consistency. And the product made a sticky mess out of the bag. I don't know how much of this accumulated grime is from that product and how much of it is dirt that was already there. But the air compressor did a pretty good job of blowing the dust that had accumulated since then off of the bag. And what I'm doing now is just going to be to try and get as much of that grime out of there as possible. If I use too stiff of a brush or too strong of a product, I'm worried that it's going to damage the very fine structure of the pores, kind of how you see on these wear areas. So let's get started. I've got with me some Q-tips, some cotton balls, some Bic 1 leather cleaner, and a very fine brush that's sort of the consistency of a toothbrush. And I've tried using it already. It seems to work pretty good. So what I'll be doing is applying, let's find an area where there's a bit of that grime. Just a spot of it there. And trying to work it into that deep grain. And as you can see, it is loosening. I hope that's not some of the pigment too, but I think it is in that dirt. I tried before using a cotton rag to absorb the excess, and it didn't work because the grain here is too deep. The folds, the crevices, they remind me of gyri in the brain, are too deep for the cloth to really work in there. I wish I had something that was more pointed than a Q-tip. I don't know what that would be. Maybe some sort of a lady's makeup remover. See, the Q-tip alone doesn't do a very good job of what I'm trying to do. And that's a little bit more that brown. I hope that's not dye from the bag, but like I said, I think it is. Trying to get down in there. And it is working, but this is going to take a lot of effort. I'll be back in a bit. Unfortunately, and this is what I was afraid of, you can see in the middle of the screen here that the brush is abrading the surface of the leather here. It's starting to take on almost like a suede nap to it. And even around the area here, you can kind of see where in the Bic will dry more, and this darker spot will fade. At least it did when I tested the product. But you can see kind of that transition where, or maybe over on the side, the pores of the walrus are more pronounced. And kind of as we move towards the center of where I was working here, they start to disappear where they were worn down a little bit by the brush. This is where the deepest area of grime was, sort of like it is over here. And in order to really get in there, I'm starting to do damage to the bag. So I'm going to have to come up with a new plan. As I'm trying to work on the bag, I've got some help here. She has to come and investigate and see what's going on. Hopefully that'll bring me good luck. I'm not the only one who's interested in it. I guess she's had enough. But you can kind of see more indication of how delicate this leather is, despite being so thick. And the surface of it seeming so stable, it really isn't. Rubbing alcohol is, I don't know, another go-to cleaning product. The advantage of it is that it does a little bit better job of dissolving any waxy material, if that is conditioner that's in there. It does a little bit better job of dissolving that waxy material than the Bic 1. But it's also harsher, and it's very drying. So it's not ideal. And there, I didn't have my damn camera on the area that I'm working on. I apologize. But I've got just a little bit of this rubbing alcohol. Let's find an area here where there's some heavier grime. And I don't know what it's taking up there. If that's dirt. But it doesn't look like it's dissolving. And as I look more carefully at it, actually, as I look at it in the camera, it looks like that too might be, the alcohol and the Q-tip even might be too harsh on the skin here.
At this point, I made the decision to stop trying to clean the bag and instead shift my attention to conditioning and trying to stabilize it.
I've already done this to the other parts of the bag, and it turned out really well. Bic More Exotic, I don't know how it's different from Bic 4, but it's a little bit thinner in consistency, and it comes in this handy spray bottle. One of the reasons I chose this product, well, the main reason is that it's the mildest conditioner that I'm aware of, but the spray bottle is also perfect for getting deep within the ridges, the grain of the bag. I got a little bit too much in the middle there. I've also got a very soft goat hair brush. I'm using that because I'm not worried about the goat hair abrading the surface of the bag, but I don't want the conditioner to build up in there and dry in what may be what happened in other parts of the bag. I'm not sure if that's dirt or dried conditioner from my previous attempt at restoring it about 10 years ago using a different, much more viscous product. And I'm going to continue doing that across the bottom of the bag as I've done in other parts of it, applying a thin layer of the Bic Exotic and then using the brush just to make sure that there isn't any accumulation of product in those deep folds of the skin. Here's an area of the bag that I had previously worked on with Bic 1. And in deciding that I'm going to set the project aside, I'm not sure that the camera there, you can see it, fully picks this up. I sprayed it again with a bit more exotic, and I'm noticing as I work that in with the brush that this area that I was targeting isn't responding the same way as, say, this area to the conditioner. This area is more matte. It seems to have absorbed the conditioner differently than this area, and that's reinforcing my decision to not go any further, that I'm worried that I'm doing more harm than good.
Here's the bag back where it lives, on top of a bookcase in my office, surrounded by other little trinkets and things that I've collected over the years. The project didn't go as well as I had hoped. I had really hoped to get all of that debris, dirt and debris, out of the ridges of the leather, but I just didn't think that I would be able to finish successfully without having it become counterproductive and damage the bag. Seeing as it doesn't get used, hopefully it's stabilized and can sit up there for years to come. Thanks for watching.